It is 8 a.m. and I'm going to prove this to you so that you'll believe me, because I know that it looks dark. It's dark purely because I live in England and it's 8 a.m. and there's still no sun. I want to get started writing at 8:30 exactly, and so I have a solid 16 minutes to A, drink my tea, and B, speak to you a little bit about Plath and her writing routine and just her in general. And so Plath, if you don't know, Sylvia Plath was an incredible poet and also author of her time, and she lived from the 30s to the 60s before she tragically lost her life succumbing to her struggles with mental illness. She has a very distinct voice that it's the kind of voice that if you are somebody who reads a lot of poetry and you are aware of her voice, you'd be able to pick it out of a crowd like that. Plath was a pioneer in a genre of poetry called confessional poetry, which is my favorite genre. She receives a lot of spotlight for her writing amongst younger women who really resonate with her writings when she was herself a younger woman and discussed her trials and tribulations and personal experience with mental illness and with a really shitty marriage, excuse my French, and things of the sort. And so she is a very relatable figure in the presence of the world of writing. In her life, Plath was known for many things, one of them being journaling. She journaled religiously and she sent a lot of letters, and so this was all tracked. All of her writings are tracked via her journals, and her published pieces and her unpublished pieces later sent out into the world by Ted Hughes, and also her letters to her mother. She read a lot of letters to her mother, so her correspondence with her mother is where we get this idea of her writing routines from. In her early adult years, when she married Ted Hughes, they had a writing routine that was start at around 8:30, finish at around 12:30, and then do whatever you do with your day, you know, do household chores, see a friend, have a meal, those kinds of things. And then they'd pick up writing again around 4. In the early years, their writing routine together was considerably harmonious and flowed quite well. Then later, when they had children, the way that they divided their writing routine was Plath would generally take the mornings and Hughes would generally take the evening/afternoon. Towards the end of Plath's life, she divorced Ted Hughes, and the children were obviously demanding a lot more from her, and she was very much intensely struggling with her mental illness at this point. She was very heavily medicated for this, and so she was on sedatives. And so Plath would get up between the hours of 4 and 8 a.m. and write frenzied writing for those 4 hours until her kids awoke and until her sedatives wore off, really. And that is when much of her great work of poetry, Ariel, the collection, was conceived. I'm trialing Plath's routine today, A, because it was very much requested, and B, because I think it's an interesting one. I'm a morning writer, and so any writing routine that starts quite early I do love, and so perhaps a separate video with Plath's frenzied writing routine from 4 to 8 a.m. would be a fun separate video, but I mean, would I have to take sedatives for it? All that said, I'm looking out the window and it is a particularly gloomy, perfect, in my opinion, London morning. And this is exactly what Sylvia Plath would have seen towards the later years of her life when she did live in London, in Primrose Hill. It is 8:25 a.m. and before we jump into writing, we're going to have a very quick word from this video's wonderful sponsor, G2A. G2A stands for Gate to Adventure, and Gate to Adventure is an online space where you can dive into a whole world of digital entertainment, aka the ultimate adventure terminal. And currently it is a festive adventure thanks to the Christmas calendar deals. G2A offers a variety of goodies such as software, including software you can write on because I know my audience, and also games, and even gift cards for your favorite platforms such as Netflix and more. Let's spotlight games because G2A has so many games. Think Minecraft, The Sims, Hogwarts Legacy, and more, all available at very low discounts. Every day is a gift at G2A, and you can uncover the festive magic with fantastic deals that come with instant delivery, which means zero waiting around, so you can start playing right away. Don't miss today's Christmas calendar deal, and be sure to revisit daily for fresh digital key offers via the link in my description box. Thank you, G2A, for making this video possible, and thank you for watching. Let's get on with it, shall we?
On the grass, still
bit past 12, I got carried away. But you know, it's best to not immediately stop something if you're mid-sentence, right? Telling myself that. Anyway, so now I've got until 4 p.m-ish to do things that I need to do, I suppose. It is still a perfectly gloomy day, and I found out that I don't actually live all too far from where Plath lived when she lived in London. So I thought maybe I can go for a little walk and take you with me and show you where she lived and show you her little blue plaque. But respectfully, before I do that, I need to finish knitting my scarf. I think it's quite cute. I just want to make it a little bit longer, and I don't have that much wool left, so I may as well finish this. And then I'm also starving, so I will eat something as well. And then we can go on a little voyage, a little bit of a Plath history trip around North London. It always feels so human when you make something and then you use the thing that you made. I know that sounds so simple, but it does, you know, those small simple things that we are unfortunately so far disconnected from in our current advanced society. I mean, just knitting a scarf and then wearing it and feeling warm because I made myself a scarf. It's just such a simple human thing, to make something that you need and to be fulfilled by it. Life can really be quite simple. Knit a scarf today. Okay, let's go explore. Just gotten back in now, and I have a little while until I have to write again, but I found a really good article whilst I was walking about Plath's life in London, and it was really nice as well to walk through Primrose Hill in the headspace of just viewing it through Plath's eyes, because there is this direct quote from Plath that says, "When I came to my beloved Primrose Hill with the golden leaves, I was full of such joy," and it is the end of autumn / beginning of winter kind of transitional period right now, and so there was all those beautiful falling autumn leaves, and it was so nice to just experience that. I also found out that Plath and I have a lot in common regarding being writers in London that aren't from the country and fell in love with the city and now only want to be in the city. She moved from America to London in September 1955. I'm just gonna take my coat off. She lived a very fun, exciting life in London. She enjoyed cocktails at the Winfield House in Regent's Park. She adored the vibrant theatre scene. She went to lectures on economics and politics at Bedford College. Everything about the city, from its coffee to its policemen, they all enthralled her. I think this is very similar to myself, because it says here that Plath's London was one informed by history, literature and her imagination. Because, you know, when you go to a place, when you are a writer and you are obsessed with this literature and culture and art of a particular place, when I travel or when I move somewhere, I'm always, the first thing I do is pluck out the spots that are infused with this energy of this literary kind of scene behind it. And she said, you remember all the Dickens you read when you were little, and suddenly you go to London and you recognize scenes you have seen before, and this is simply, I think, a sort of literary influence. I was immensely excited by the historic sense of London, and again by the look of it. She first met her future husband, Ted Hughes. She met him and got along very well, very quickly with him, and then she went back to her borrowed flat in Bloomsbury and slept with him, had a night of immense passion, dare I say. 4 months after their first passionate encounter at a drunken party in Cambridge, they got married. Which is, God, that's something I would do. I know that times were different back then, and that was, you know, there was more pressure on marriage and all those kinds of things and the nuclear family lifestyle. But for me, I'm just such a, I was gonna say hopeless romantic, but it's not even that. I think I thrive in the chaos of it all, and I'll do anything for a story. do anything. I have to do things in extremes. The pair lived in various places: Cambridge, Spain, Massachusetts. I love saying Massachusetts as a non-American. That's such a fun word, Massachusetts. But then they returned to London in early 1960, and she said verbatim, "I'd rather live in London than anywhere in the world." Settled in a small unfurnished flat at 3 Chalcot Square in Primrose Hill, which I just took you to, which cost them 6 guineas a week. How many? Let me find out how many how many money. In today's money, a guinea is worth £1 and 5 pence, and so they were paying £6 and 30 pence a week for for a flat in Primrose Hill. I think I remember reading that Primrose Hill was slummy back then, which is so interesting because now it's posh. There's a bunch of info here about her evenings and her rather scandalous life spent gossiping about D.H. Lawrence, Virginia Woolf, Auden, Stravinsky, all those people, because they associated with a lot of other poets and writers and whatnot, and so that was very much like a little elusive circle. I mean, all the writers that I meet in my circle are just really kind and lovely, and there isn't that much gossip because I suppose times are different. Everyone has to be crystal clean if you want to sell something, you have to sell yourself, and you have to be crystal clean. Eventually, that little flat that I showed you with the blue plaque in Chalcot Square got much too small for them as they had children, and they dreamt of a life in the countryside where they could have a larger house. And Plath wrote, "We are dreaming of a house where I can shout out to Ted from one end to the other and he won't be able to hear me." So in the summer of 1961, the couple began to look for a property in Devon, settling on Court Green, a thatched house with a large orchard in the village of North Taunton. But this is where it gets saucy, and this is Ted Hughes, why we hate him so much. Well, there's many reasons, but number one is he had an affair on Sylvia Plath with the woman that they rented their flat to whilst they were living in the countryside. Her name is Arcia, and she is a translator of literature, and I have, in my last video where I read you love poetry, I read something translated by her. So after Sylvia discovered Ted's infidelity, she fell into a deep, dark depression. Naturally, she was in the countryside, completely abandoned. She had nothing there except for Ted and her children. Her entire life was in London, and so she longed to go back to London. Eventually, she did go back to London. She divorced Ted, and she had a space with her children. And this was the time period where she'd get up at 4 AM and write in this heated frenzy to get as much as she could for her book Ariel, which was one of the things that made her so famous and well known and respected in the literary world. In these letter correspondences, she said that the second she arrived back in London, she was beginning to feel much better and much happier and not as terribly depressed after finding out her husband's infidelity. But then on 11th of February 1963, during one of the worst winters on record, Plath, in the grip of a deep depression, prepared to end her life. The story of how she actually did it goes quite in depth, and it really is quite grueling. I will link this article that I am reading out essentially verbatim in the description box, but poignantly, a few weeks before, Plath, who was only 30, had written, as I started with, "When I came to my beloved Primrose Hill with the golden leaves, I was full of such joy." I should turn a lamp on, it's very dull and grey in here. That really made a difference. I wish I had that on that entire time. I'm so sorry you had to sit in this cold grey world with me. I do appreciate the break that I've been granted during the day for errands, because I did have a few errands that I had to run. It is now 3:30 PM and I meant to start writing at 4, but I have some more errands I have to run this evening, so rather than do 4 to 6, I might do 3:30 to 5:30. Pushing it forward by half an hour. I'm sure she wasn't religiously strict. And so now I will commence 2 more hours of writing, I should say editing, and then I will touch base back in with you afterwards, talk about thoughts and feelings and how I feel about the routine in general, and then that shall conclude the day. Time check. It has gotten so dark. It's 5:07 PM. I still have 20 minutes left of writing to do, but it has gotten so dark, and I didn't realize until I just looked up from my laptop. The joys of English winter. Oh, I just spilled wax on my hand. It is 5:34. That means that it's time to stop writing because it's been 2 hours, but I actually just got in the best zone, if you will, that I've been in all day, and now it's hard to stop. But I'm also really glad that I get to stop, because today just kind of sucked a bit, actually, writing wise. Editing just sucks a bit. I'm getting hot wax all over my hands. I should put this down. Okay, so likes and dislikes about Sylvia Plath's writing routine applied to my personal lifestyle. Liked the fact that there was a big gap in the center of the day for me to do things that I needed to do, so I wasn't tied down to just writing all day. There was a nice solid 3.5 hour gap that I could venture out into the world and do things and run errands and do things that usually I'd feel bad for not doing or do and then get distracted and not write for. And so that was a nice, I like that it was broken up. B, I think it's a very accessible writing routine overall. It's not like, it was quite flexible. I mean, as it developed with her throughout her life stages and whatnot. So if you do have children, or if you have a job, or if you have study commitments or whatnot, there is flexibility to this routine if you're willing to get up at 4 a.m. I think most people would like that it was a decent time start at what, 8:30 a.m. but see, I prefer to start much earlier, and so it did feel for me like a bit of a setback having to wait until 8:30 a.m. because usually when I wake up I just kind of start writing like that, but I was just kind of meandering and pottering around making a cup of tea and brushing my teeth extra long. I actually did like that I came back to writing for a little bit after my lunch break as well, because the other writing routines that are morning centric usually do, such as Hemingway's, you pump out a fair bit by lunchtime, and by lunchtime the whole entire day is yours. And I've always spoken about how much I love that because that does work best for me. But coming back to it after I strolled around and whatnot in Primrose Hill and looked at Plath's personal little life and everything, I was actually feeling quite motivated to get back into it, and I did do the best work that I've done all day in those 2 hours. And the fact that it was just 2 hours, it did go pretty quick. What I didn't love, whilst it had the break in the middle, it still did feel like it took up my entire day, because it started at 8:30 and is meant to end at 6 p.m. because I did the full Monty. It did feel like it took up the entire day, even though I did have the gap in the middle. I suppose that's just psychosomatic and more so me in my head, so probably don't count that. I'm looking over here because there's a moth on my lamp, and I love moths, and it's just battering around. Moths are quite clumsy actually, it's just bonking itself into the lamp every so often. Insects aren't that agile, I've come to realize, especially bumblebees. We don't have bumblebees in Australia, well, not that I've seen, not native or local. And the bumblebees here, they're so big and clumsy, and they just bonk and bonk and bonk and bonk into things. There's no dexterity or agility. I'm so sidetracked right now. I have a feeling this video is going to be a rather long one, just because I have had a lot to say today. I've been quite rambly. I'm feeling pensive and conversational and chatty, so thank you for putting up with me for that. As I said, it is now 5:39 because I started a bit earlier, and I have errands to run on what is today? On a Saturday eve. Oh, it's gonna be terrible running errands tonight. That's all right, I'll be fine. I can brave the masses. Thank you for spending the day with me. I feel like I'm at a nice point creatively. I don't feel drained per se, but I don't feel like I didn't do anything, so it's a nice midpoint. I might use elements of this in the future. I might, if I have a morning burst, I might realize that coming back to it later in the day is actually good and not counterintuitive, or counterproductive, I should say. I love you. Please enjoy your day, and if you try this, do comment how you went, and if you have any thoughts surrounding routines or Plath or anything at all, comment them, because I like that the comments are like a little forum.
Hello, it is me, ever so rudely interrupting myself here. Well, let's call it intellectually interjecting, but I did want to just drop a note on this because I was going to pin a comment detailing this, but I think not everybody ventures to the comments, so let me just say this really quick. It is important to recognize a writer or the writer's books or the artist or the artist's art as the literary/artistic worth that it produces and provides, but also it's important to recognize this as a cultural contextual product of the era. In this case, Plath lived from the early 30s to the early 60s, which was notoriously and really horribly, unfortunately, a very racist and anti-Semitic time. I think that you can connect the dots, see how her cultural context would inform the art that she created, and so I just want to drop a note to say that my intention is to not mindlessly glorify her morality or her ethics. I just want to gloss over her life in London and trial her writing routine as an established writer. I think it's really important to read things critically, and university helped me with this so much, to be able to not per se separate the art from the artist, but view the art as a product of the artist's lifestyle and culture and era and all of that context. I think you can enjoy a piece of art whilst also denouncing the horrible themes that may be littered throughout. This is a very common theme in older or classic literature. Of course, this is completely subjective to you as a reader and your lived-in experiences, so I just wanted to drop that note to be completely transparent and completely honest with you. So let's continue with the video, shall we?
Good night. I love you, and I will see you next time.